What kind of person steps out of a plane into darkness and hopes the ground is where it is supposed to be? These movies don't just show brave drops. They come from real plans that barely made sense on paper. Right in the middle of history, someone said yes and jumped anyway. Some of these stories sound exaggerated. Some feel impossible, and one or two were so close to reality that officials wanted them softened. Stay with me, because what starts as cinema slowly turns into proof. Number 15, The Great Escape, 1963. This film looks like adventure. The real story behind it was quiet defiance stretched over months. The Great Escape is remembered for bold movement and clever planning, but its roots sit in real events from World War II. The story draws from the mass escape of Allied airmen, many of them trained for airborne roles, held in a high-security camp designed to break morale. The real operation was slow, patient, and dangerous in ways the film only hints at. The movie simplifies the process, but the foundation is real. Prisoners dug tunnels by hand, hid dirt in their clothes, and memorized railway maps from memory. Several of the real escapees had airborne backgrounds. They were used to planning under pressure and moving silently. That experience mattered. When the escape finally happened, it became one of the largest coordinated breakouts of the war. Behind the scenes, filmmakers worked from official reports and survivor interviews. Sets were rebuilt from original blueprints. The tone was adjusted to keep the story watchable, but the emotional core stayed intact. That choice caused debate. Some veterans felt the lighter moments hid the cost. Others believed the spirit of resistance mattered more than exact detail. The impact has lasted for decades. Military schools still reference the escape as an example of teamwork and mental endurance. This film reminds you that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is measured in inches of dirt and nights without sleep. It sounds cinematic. It was real. Number 14, The Dirty Dozen, 1967. This one feels outrageous on purpose, but parts of it were closer to history than many admit. The Dirty Dozen follows a group of unwanted soldiers trained for a high-risk airborne mission. Officially, the story is fiction. Unofficially, it echoes real wartime experiments that were never meant for public discussion. During World War II, several Allied units tested the idea of using unconventional personnel for impossible objectives. The film exaggerates personalities and leans into dark humor, but the structure is grounded in truth. There were real airborne missions where failure was expected and success was uncertain. Training was harsh. Rules were different. The goal was simple: do the job and don't come back empty-handed. During production, the director pushed realism hard. Actors went through real jump preparation. Military advisors kept scenes grounded even when the story stretched. The result felt raw for its time. Some countries resisted it. Others embraced it as an honest look at desperation. What makes this movie endure is not the spectacle. It is the idea that war forces strange decisions. When resources run thin, planners look for options that sound impossible. This story shows how thin the line can be between discipline and chaos. It feels larger than life. That is why it works. Because real history often does not sound reasonable until you realize it already happened. Number 13, The Eagle Has Landed, 1976. Many viewers thought this mission actually happened. That confusion was no accident. The Eagle Has Landed presents a secret airborne operation that feels detailed, tense, and oddly believable. While the specific plot is fictional, it was inspired by real intelligence concerns during World War II. Both sides quietly studied airborne raids aimed at leadership disruption. The idea alone caused real fear. The filmmakers leaned into realism. Uniforms were exact. Procedures matched known airborne doctrine. Jump scenes were handled with restraint rather than spectacle. That grounded approach made the story feel like a leaked file instead of a movie script. Behind the scenes, advisors with military experience helped shape the tone. The goal was not to shock, but to convince. Some officials were uncomfortable with how real it felt. Viewers walked out unsure where fact ended and fiction began. That reaction is the film's legacy. It highlights how airborne operations often exist in shadows. Plans are discussed. Rumors spread. Only a few are ever approved. This movie captures that uneasy space where imagination overlaps with possibility. It stands as a reminder that history is full of near decisions, things that were planned, debated, and almost attempted. Sometimes the most unsettling stories are the ones that could have happened. Number 12, Go Tell the Spartans, 1978. This film does not rush. It watches young airborne troops walk towards something they do not fully understand. Set during the early stages of the Vietnam conflict, this story reflects real deployments before the situation was officially acknowledged. Paratroopers were sent into isolated areas with limited information and unclear goals. The movie captures that uncertainty with uncomfortable honesty. The characters are not heroic symbols. They are tired, curious, and slowly aware that plans are fragile. That approach came from real accounts. Veterans who advised the film described early missions that felt disconnected from strategy. Orders came. Context did not. The production avoided spectacle. Scenes linger. Silence matters. Training feels rushed. Movement feels cautious. That realism caused trouble. Studios worried the tone was too heavy. Distribution was limited. The film nearly disappeared. Over time, it gained respect. Historians praised its accuracy. Soldiers recognized the feeling. Being early means being unprepared and unseen. This movie shows how airborne forces often arrive before answers do. It does not glorify the jump. It questions why it happened. That honesty gives it weight. Some stories are not about winning. They are about being sent first and finding meaning later. Number 11. The Sea Shall Not Have Them, 1954. Paratroopers do not always land on ground. Sometimes they land where survival itself is the challenge. This film focuses on real air-sea rescue teams from World War II. These units trained to leap from aircraft into cold water to reach downed pilots. The mission was simple in theory: reach the person before time runs out. In reality, many never returned. The movie stays quiet and focused. There are no grand speeches, just preparation, descent, and waiting. That tone came from real stories shared by rescue veterans. They described fear not of the jump, but of the water. Filming was physically demanding. Cold conditions were recreated carefully. Advisors corrected small details because survival depended on them. How to enter the water, how to stay calm, how to wait. Some officials worried the film revealed too much about rescue methods. The director refused to change it. He believed these stories deserved honesty. This entry expands the idea of what airborne service means. It is not always about landing behind lines. Sometimes it is about reaching someone who would otherwise be lost. It sounds unlikely. It was routine. And that is what makes it unforgettable. Number 10, Saints and Soldiers, 2003. This one feels small on the surface, but the real events behind it were anything but. Saints and Soldiers is inspired by the chaos following the Battle of the Bulge, when airborne troops found themselves scattered, cut off, and forced to rely on instinct rather than orders. The story centers on a handful of paratroopers who survive an early disaster and try to move through hostile territory without support. That situation happened more often than official reports admit. What makes the film stand out is its focus on choice. Real airborne soldiers described moments where plans vanished the second they hit the ground. Radios failed. Units separated. Leadership became whoever stayed calm. The movie leans into that reality. Movement is slow. Decisions carry weight. Silence fills the gaps. The production stayed grounded. Period gear was used. Winter conditions were real. Actors trained to move like exhausted soldiers, not action heroes. Some festivals hesitated to screen it because it avoided spectacle. Viewers expecting loud scenes missed the point. Among veterans, the film gained respect. Instructors used clips to discuss survival thinking rather than tactics. The story shows that airborne history is not only about daring jumps, it is about what happens after, when courage turns into patience. This movie proves that truth does not need size. Sometimes the most accurate stories follow the smallest groups. Number 9. The Red Beret, 1953. This film arrived when memories were still raw, and that tension shows in every frame. The Red Beret focuses on the British Parachute Regiment and draws from real missions carried out during World War II. While the story blends characters and events, the training, discipline, and airborne culture come straight from the source. What makes it special is access. The film was made with direct military cooperation. Serving paratroopers appeared on screen. Real equipment was used. Jumps were performed with minimal camera tricks. That authenticity gave the movie weight. The story follows an outsider earning trust through effort, not words. Veterans connected to that theme. Airborne units valued competence over background. The film reflects that mindset quietly and confidently. Some details were softened at the request of officials. Certain procedures were changed. Even so, the heart of airborne life remained intact. Waiting at the door, trusting the signal, stepping out. At release, audiences responded strongly. Critics debated whether it leaned too much toward pride. Paratroopers simply recognized themselves. This movie stands as an early example of airborne realism. Not flashy, not exaggerated, just focused on what it takes to belong to a unit that lives between sky and ground. Number 8. Battleground, 1949. This is the film that many soldiers said felt uncomfortably familiar. Battleground tells the story of the 101st Airborne during the siege of Bastogne. It was made by people who had lived through the war and were not interested in polishing it. The cold matters here. Hunger matters. Waiting matters. Those details came from real accounts shared with the filmmakers. Veterans served as advisors. Some scenes were adjusted because survivors said they were too close to memory. Production conditions were harsh by design. Actors worked in freezing settings. Fatigue was real. That choice paid off. Performances feel restrained and honest. The studio worried audiences would find it bleak. Instead, it became a landmark. Soldiers praised it. Military leaders referenced it. Training programs used it to explain endurance rather than tactics. This film changed how war stories were told. It proved that audiences could handle realism without spectacle. That airborne history was about holding ground as much as taking it. Battleground does not rush. It waits, just like the real men did. And that patience makes it powerful. Number 7. Pathfinders, In the Company of Strangers, 2011. Before the main force arrives, someone has to go first. This film is about those people. Pathfinders tells the story of airborne units tasked with jumping ahead of larger formations to mark landing zones. These were real missions carried out during World War II, often in darkness, often alone. The film was built from declassified reports and veteran interviews. The goal was accuracy over polish. Night jumps are confusing. Landings are rough. Communication is uncertain. That realism unsettled some viewers. Actors trained extensively. Procedures were followed carefully. Mistakes were left in when they matched real accounts. The result feels raw and direct. Critics pointed to rough edges. Veterans pointed to truth. They recognized the loneliness of being first out the door. No cheering, no backup, just responsibility. This movie fills a gap in airborne storytelling. It reminds viewers that major operations depend on quiet preparation, that success often rests on people history forgets. It sounds dramatic, it was routine, and that is what makes it remarkable. Number 6, Band of Brothers, 2001. This is not just a series, it is a living record. Band of Brothers follows Easy Company of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment from training to the end of World War II. Every episode draws from first-hand testimony. The production demanded authenticity. Surviving veterans advised scenes. Training was intense. Conditions were real. Exhaustion was not acted. What sets it apart is perspective. The focus stays on people, not plans. Fear, doubt, and quiet strength drive the story. Airborne operations are shown as confusing and costly, not clean. The impact was immediate and lasting. Veterans felt seen. Younger viewers understood the cost. Military programs used it as a teaching tool. This series redefined what historical storytelling could be. It proved that accuracy and emotion could coexist. Band of Brothers does not exaggerate airborne history. It listens to it, and that respect is why it remains unmatched. Number 5, The Great Raid, 2005. This story sounds like a rumor soldiers tell each other, until you realize every major beat is documented. The Great Raid is based on the real rescue of prisoners held in the Philippines near the end of World War II. Airborne forces and ground units worked together in a mission that required absolute timing. If anything went wrong, there was no backup plan. The real operation depended on surprise, distance, and silence. Paratroopers trained to move fast after landing, knowing daylight would end everything. The film respects that tension. Scenes slow down instead of rushing. Every step feels counted. Filmmakers worked closely with historians. Uniforms, routes, and timelines were checked repeatedly. Some studio voices pushed for more spectacle. The director resisted. He wanted viewers to feel the waiting more than the action. When it released, reactions were mixed. Some audiences expected excitement. Veterans recognized restraint. They saw a mission where success depended on discipline, not drama. This movie matters because it highlights airborne work outside Europe. It reminds viewers that paratroopers operated across vast terrain, often with little recognition. It feels unreal because it required perfection. That is why it worked, and why it still stands as proof that some of the boldest plans were carried out quietly. Number 4, When Trumpets Fade, 1998. This film does not explain itself. It drops you into confusion and leaves you there. When Trumpets Fade focuses on airborne infantry during the fighting in the Hurtgen Forest. The story blends real testimonies into a single narrative. The result feels fragmented, because that is how the experience was described. Orders change, leadership disappears. Fatigue shapes every decision. Those details came directly from veterans who felt forgotten by official history. The film avoids heroic framing. Survival becomes the goal. Production conditions were intentionally difficult. Cold, mud, and exhaustion were constant. Actors were encouraged to stay uncomfortable. That realism shows. Performances feel worn down rather than energized. The release was quiet. No major promotion. Yet among soldiers, the response was immediate. Letters arrived thanking the filmmakers for honesty. Training instructors used scenes to discuss morale under pressure. This movie challenges the idea that airborne stories must inspire. Sometimes they inform instead. They remind viewers that history includes confusion and endurance, not just clear victories. It stays with you because it refuses to comfort, and that refusal feels truthful. Number 3, The Devil's Brigade, 1968. This unit was real, and its reputation was earned the hard way. The Devil's Brigade tells the story of the 1st Special Service Force, a joint American and Canadian airborne unit formed for extreme missions. They trained harder, moved faster, and were sent where others could not go. The film shows that formation honestly. Training is harsh. Trust is slow. Leadership is tested. Those elements came from real records and veteran accounts. The unit's operations in Italy became legendary. Behind the camera, advisors argued over accuracy. Some moments were softened. Others stayed raw. The result balanced watchability with respect. Audiences were unsure how to take it at first. It did not fit clean categories. Over time, its reputation grew. Paratroopers recognized the lineage. Modern special units traced their culture back to these early experiments. This movie captures the birth of a new kind of airborne force, one built on adaptability rather than tradition. It sounds exaggerated. It was simply new, and that is why it mattered. Number 2. A Bridge Too Far, 1977. This is a story about ambition colliding with reality. A Bridge Too Far depicts Operation Market Garden, the largest airborne operation of World War II. The goal was bold. The execution was costly. The film does not hide either. Multiple airborne divisions were dropped deep into contested territory. Timelines slipped. Coordination failed. The movie shows that collapse with precision. Veterans advised heavily. Some scenes were adjusted because they felt too familiar. Production scale matched the story. Thousands of extras, real equipment, large locations. Yet the focus stays on individuals trying to adapt as plans fall apart. Officials worried the film would highlight failure. The director insisted that truth mattered more. When released, reactions were divided. Veterans stood and applauded. They saw their experience reflected without excuses. This movie reframed how airborne history was discussed. It acknowledged that courage does not guarantee success. It remains a warning told through spectacle, one that reminds viewers that even the boldest ideas must survive contact with reality. Number 1. The Longest Day, 1962. This is not just a movie. It is memory rebuilt at full scale. The Longest Day chronicles the airborne landings of D-Day, focusing on the paratroopers who jumped hours before the main invasion. Their mission was chaos by design: scatter, confuse, hold ground. What sets this film apart is who helped make it. Veterans served as advisors and actors. Some had jumped into Normandy themselves. Their presence shaped every scene. Production was massive and risky. Jumps were real. Mistakes happened. Injuries occurred. That danger mirrors the story it tells. Officials reviewed footage closely. Certain details worried them. Others stayed. The film presents multiple perspectives without softening the confusion. Landings go wrong, units mix, plans dissolve. That honesty defined its legacy. For decades, paratroopers have watched this film as a rite of passage, not for entertainment, but recognition. It sounds unreal because it was. Thousands stepping into darkness at once, and history changing because they did. So what does it say about history when the wildest stories turn out to be accurate? These films are not just entertainment. They are echoes of real decisions made in seconds that shaped entire wars. If one of these surprised you, share it. If one stayed with you, talk about it. And if you know a story that sounds fake but isn't, drop it below. Because sometimes the truth doesn't land gently. It falls.